Hi, welcome everyone. We are live with Susan McCeldry.
Uh-oh.
We're live for.
Sorry, we have had so many technical difficulties. We're hoping, let's see. Oh my goodness. Usually we can see the chat. Okay, there's the comments over there. Okay, so if you can hear us, please somebody comment, start chatting, so we know that you guys can hear us. Hi, can you hear us? Can you hear us?
If you can hear us, go ahead and say something below. Maybe you could pull it up on your phone and see the chat. Hi everyone, welcome. We're here for Susan's book launch today. Super exciting stuff. We're just trying to make sure you can hear us and see us. So if you can hear us or see us, go ahead and say something below in the comments. Yes, I'm talking to you. Oh, hi Danielle.
Where? Oh, okay.
Yes,
all right.
Awesome.
We see people. Can you hear us? Yes, you can hear us.
You can see us. We're in action. Yeah, they can see us and hear us. So we are live at the launch event for your new book. How exciting!
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll dive right in.
Sure.
I know. There's so many people out here.
Okay, so we'll just hang on a minute. Let's see if other viewers start coming on. We had a lot of technical difficulties. Facebook changed their whole profile picture, profile screen, and it just mixed everything up. So we were having a hard time trying to log on. So we'll just hang on a minute and see if people start coming on.
Yes. So if you missed out,
there's Josie.
Yes, welcome Josie. If you missed out on the in-person event, we just had, I was just a guest here, a good launch party in Lakeland at Crest Lakeland, which was very nice that they were able to host us. And
yes, we had a nice turnout. Family and friends came to support and for the book signing, and it was a wonderful time. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started.
Yes, so I want to introduce the book. It's Heaven's Joy, The Seeking and Saving of a Runaway Psychic, written by Susan, who grew up in Lakeland, Florida. Awesome. So let's jump right in, and I'm going to ask you for a short overview for those who have not read it yet or interested in looking into it.
Yes, so Heaven's Joy. It's a story. I spent 2 years in the psychic world. I was lured and drawn into it. There were so many events that happened in my life that kind of led me into that direction. And so I was just easy prey, so to say, for what was to come. So I practiced in the psychic world for a couple of years until an extreme event that took place, and God saved me out of it. And so the book is telling the story of some of my backstory, my story, how I ended up becoming involved in the whole psychic world, and my fall, and then God's redemption of my life. So it's split into two parts, part 1 and part 2. and it's a very unique story. The way it's written, splitting it into two parts, is not something that you normally see in this type of book. So I'm excited. I'm excited today's launch day, and that it can finally be spoken of out in public and shared with everybody.
Yes, that's awesome. So you poured your heart into it. It definitely was right from your soul. It has a lot of good information on how you overcame that and are here. So how long did it take you to write the book?
I knew that everything happened in 2014, and I knew at that time that I would be writing a book. I didn't know when, but I knew that it was something that was going to happen eventually at some time. But I had a lot of healing I had to go through. I went through a lot of therapy, and I knew at that time was not the right time. I knew I really needed to have a solid foundation in Jesus and who he is, and learning about him and what he did for me. And once I had that solid foundation, that I knew that I could face everything and write it down without being in fear. So around 2000, towards the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, I knew, I need to start writing this book before I start forgetting all the details. So I basically just started writing the story, and which is not what is recommended. It's recommended, that you have an outline of your book before you even start it. But I really didn't have any idea what the final product was going to look like, where I was really going with the story, what I wanted to accomplish with the story. So my first goal was just to write the whole story down, and then I would go from there. And that was definitely the long route to go, because going that route, and plus there were some bumps and bruises along the way and some detours. So the book actually ended up taking about 3.5 years from beginning to what it is today.
Awesome. Very unconventional process, but I know a lot of what you speak about in your book is unconventional to the Christian circles as well. If not, we look the other way, or it's just not talked about because of the topic. That being said, were there challenges to writing about something that's normally not discussed in that group?
Yeah. When I was talking to a group of it's called the Titus 2 group through our church, and it was a group of women that we would meet with once a month. And that's when I started talking to them about what I was thinking about doing and writing this story. And one of the women spoke up, and she said, what you're about to do is, you're directly taking on the devil, and this is not going to be an easy road. So I was completely prepared for anything that came along the way. I wasn't really surprised with much of there was quite a few complications, obstacles. I went through 3 editors. It's just was a long road, and it was very challenging. But I knew through the whole thing, I just prayed through this whole process. I knew God was with me, and I knew if he wanted this book to be written, he was going to bring it to completion. And he did. So anytime anything happened, I just prayed. And, I know this is happening. It's happening for a reason. And I just prayed through it all.
Awesome. We did have a hang up with our Facebook Live, so
I was not surprised when we had this
yes.
difficulty trying to log on live. I'm just like, of course this is going to happen. But we made it.
Yes, a little resiliency brought you here, but without fail, we're here. So, Felon, I'm just going to jump right into the occult realm. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or you want to save it for the readers?
What exactly?
So how did you get pulled in, or what was enticing about it? Is there anything you want to share about it in general, or how easy? I hear it's easy to get pulled in that direction just based on.
Yeah.
society nowadays.
In the book, I give a lot of the backstory of all the steps that happened in my life that kind of led me in that direction, but I'm going to kind of skip to a certain point of when I decided that this was definitely what I thought was the right way to go. When I decided to start looking into the psychic world, but I will say the one thing that always kind of put it in my mind, my grandfather was claimed, or, the family thought he had some kind of power of knowing. And he died when I was like a year old, so I never really got to know him. But I used to love hearing the stories. There were some stories about the things that he did, and he did tarot cards, and it was always just very interesting and intriguing to me instead of something that I should turn away from. And he was a Christian, so I had that kind of confusion going on as well, that he's a Christian, but then he was doing this other stuff. So when I decided that this was what I wanted to look into, because I thought I had I had inherited his power, it was like I was just lured in like a fish chasing the bait. And I did this, I looked into this one psychic that she published these books that were supposed to help you develop your power. If you had a psychic power, then you follow these steps. And one of the final steps was you sit there with your hands like this, and you do all the whatever she said to do. I can't even remember. And she says, and if you do everything right, and if you have the power, it's going to feel like you're holding a ball in your hand. So you're going to feel like there's actually something there, even though there's nothing there. So they call that like feeling energy. So I did everything she said, and I'll be darned if I didn't feel like I had energy, like I was holding a ball of energy in my hands. And that was the moment I was just like, oh my gosh, I have the power, and this is what I've been searching for my whole life. And that's how I really got involved into it.
Yeah. Without glorifying that, I can understand why a book like that could pull you closer to it. What finally turned you away from it, or what was that moment where you were like, nope, no more?
So I was in the psychic realm for 2 years, and as those years went on, it kept going deeper and deeper. I signed up with someone who was a psychic, and she taught these one-on-one sessions on how to develop your ability. And so I was listening to her, and of course I listened to everything she said, because some of the stuff she said was true. Even if it wasn't true, you just blew it off, because she was telling me some things that were true, and which is completely unbiblical, but I didn't know any better. As I was meeting with her, things started turning from just being a psychic medium, which is someone who connects to the dead, to when gets messages from the dead, into healing. So I started doing like these healing, it's called energy healing, which is the occult too. And people didn't even have to be in my presence. They could be in their home 1,000 miles away, and I would do this energy healing session, and it really had effects on people. So it really did stuff, but just because it does stuff and it makes you feel good doesn't mean it's good. So the more involved I got in it, when I was doing these healing sessions, I started hearing messages that I was supposed to deliver to the people that I was doing these energy healings on. So that's kind of what triggered the voice in my head. And as time went on, this voice was just like always there. Initially I would have to go through this initial connecting and surrounding yourself in the white light to protect yourself, and calling on the angels and all that baloney. And then I would receive messages, but then it got to the point towards the end where that voice was just always there. And so what happened as we got to the end of the 2 years, into the beginning of 2014, the voice was just very consuming, and whatever it said, I believed it. And I'm telling you, even though it was like hearing my own voice in my head, it was like I'm having a conversation with somebody. Like somebody is saying stuff to me that I'm not thinking about, oh, I need to say this. It's like there's a conversation going on in my head. So it came down to where the voice was telling me that my husband was cheating on me, and I believed the voice. And my husband came home one day early from work, and he had flowers in one hand and lunch in the other. And I came flying out of my bedroom and accused him of cheating on me. And he's like, "No, I'm not cheating on you. I'm not." And I'm like, "Yeah, you are. The voice is telling me, yeah." And the voice is telling me the only reason why he brought flowers and food home that day is because he was feeling guilty of what he had been doing. So the voice always had a reason, and I believed everything it said. So I ended up kicking my husband out of the house. And then he left, and while he's calling me crazy, and I'm, sitting there talking to the voice in my head. I mean, it was just insane. So that night, he was gone. The kids were in the house, and they were asleep. And the voice was promising me all these great things. And that's what the occult does. It lifts you up and makes you feel wonderful about yourself. There's no judgment. You judge yourself. You're here on earth to learn and to have spiritual growth. So when you come back for your next life, you're more evolved. That's what this is all about. And it's just a bunch of baloney. But I believed it. And that night, the voice, had been lifting me up and promising me all these great things. And something else they talk about in the psychic world is, when it comes to the spiritual world, they talk a lot about, now you've earned the crown of jewels and the crown of rubies and all this stuff. So the voice was telling me that I was now going to receive my golden halo because I was such a great person, so good. And so that night, the voice went over like a life review with me of my whole entire life, and just praising me and all the struggles I've been through, and I came through everything, and how good I was, and wonderful to come through everything I did the way I did. And then the voice said, at 3 a.m. I want you to look in the mirror, and when you look at your reflection, you're going to see the halo appear. And he said, exactly at 3 o'clock, start counting down from 10 to 0, and you will see the halo. So 3 o'clock came, and I'm all excited and stand in front of my mirror, and I start counting down. And when I got to 0, I started hearing this like crackling noise, like a sparkler makes. And so I'm thinking that's like the electrical sound, that the halo is getting ready to appear at the light. And when I got to 0, the halo didn't come. It didn't appear. And I just stood there dumbfounded. I'm like, I'm questioning the voice in my head. I'm like, well, why didn't, where's my halo? Why didn't I receive my halo? And so one point I want to make through this whole psychic experience, those 2 years, I never had I never visually saw anything from the spiritual world. I just felt the energy. So I never saw actual spirits, or I just felt the energy from them. So when I asked the voice, I was like, well, why didn't I receive my halo? And all of a sudden, when I'm looking in the mirror, I saw this dark, just complete darkness cloak. And the only way I can describe it, it looks like the cloak of the Grim Reaper that you see, just kind of rounded and, hanging at the arms. But it was just this complete darkness that appeared and overshadowed my reflection in the mirror. And the voice that had always been uplifting and loving now turned very sinister and said, the reason why you did not get your halo is because you are not good enough. And as soon as I heard and saw that, I knew, oh my gosh, I've just made the biggest mistake in my entire life. I have been in the occult with the devil. And I was scared to death. I turned away from the mirror. I looked up to God, up to heaven, and I'm screaming to God, saying, no, I love God, I love God. And in my head, I'm thinking, this is too late. I now belong to the devil. And as I'm screaming out loud to God, and I can't even explain how this happens, but as I'm screaming out loud, verbally out loud, in my ears, how you can hear your voice, my voice sounded demonic. And that even confirmed to me again, oh my gosh, I belong to the devil, and I'm going to hell. And I thought for sure it's too late. I'm now the devil's. So I went flying out of the room, My kids woke up. I'm screaming, oh my gosh, I just saw pure evil in my room. And I lost all sense of rationality. Now I'm thinking I'm possessed by the devil. Now I'm arguing with the devil because, the devil's an accuser. So now the devil has turned into accusing me of how horrible of a person I am, that I'm going to hell. And now I'm fighting with the devil in my head. And I had my kids call my whole family. So my whole family came to my house at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And they all met, and they were talking and trying to figure out what to do for me, because they already had seen what my downward spiral over the years. So they already knew something, was probably going to happen, but they didn't know. I don't think anybody expected this to happen. So they called the police. They called the sheriff's office, and a sheriff's deputy came out, and he talked to me and talked to them. And he ended up, he asked me if I wanted to go to the doctor. He wanted to get me some help. And so I finally agreed to go, and I really didn't know what was happening at that point either. But what I found out was I was Baker acted. So I was locked in the hospital for a mandatory 3 days in the mental ward. And that is how I came out of it. And I knew at that point that I would never turn towards another spirit or whatever, that I didn't want to have anything to do with it, that I wanted God in heaven. And that's how I got out of it.
Yeah, it's almost like the occult makes you to be like your own God, and then rips that right away from you.
That's what it does.
At some point in the book, you mentioned that you got out of the church even at a point younger, and you were never coming back. That's obviously changed. What brought you back?
Yeah, we had some problems in our church years ago when I was a child, when we were Lutheran, and I never thought I would ever step back into that church again. For any church for that matter. And so when I came out of the mental hospital, my mind actually started to clear while I was in there. And then that's a whole story in itself. I explain in the book every detail of what happened to me in the hospital, how God saved me, how I just continually prayed for God to help me. And my mind began to clear after 3 days. And after I came out of the hospital, I knew, and I can't explain how did I know. How did I know I was doing it wrong? Well, clearly, I was in the occult, so I know that was wrong. But how did I know through my whole life that I had been looking at Christianity in the wrong way? I don't know. All I can say is it was God. That somehow I knew what I had been doing my whole entire life was wrong, and I wanted to know the right way this time. So I reached out to a friend of mine that we used to live next door to, and she had reached out to me when she knew that I was in the occult, and she tried to turn me away from it, but I didn't want to hear it. I thought I knew better than her. So, but when I came out of the hospital, I was like, who do I know who really is a picture of their faith, that lives their life like a Christian? Because I had become so cynical of Christians. They were supposed to be doing everything right, and I was the one judging them. How could they be doing the things they did when they professed to be a Christian? But I thought I was the one doing everything right. So I had a very cynical view of Christianity and Christians. And so I was like, well, who do I know who lives the way that you really envision a Christian would live? And the person that came to mind was my friend CB. So it was hard, but I was also excited to reach out to her, to tell her that I turned away from the psychic realm, and that I wasn't doing that anymore, but then also asking her for her help. So that was humbling, and but she was very excited, and she took me under her wings, and along with the therapy they sent me up with when I came out of the hospital, I also met with her on a weekly basis, and she taught me the foundations, and this is exactly, what it's called. She taught me the foundations of Jesus, who he is and what he did for me. And I never knew it because all those years that I said I was a Christian, I had never hardly opened a Bible, never read it, never studied it. And that's one of the ways that the devil sucks you in, because you're naive and you don't know what God says about it. And you think you're doing something good because it makes you feel good, and you're hearing what you want to hear. And you're not prepared. You're not, you don't have your armor on. You don't know what God says about it, that it's evil, and it truly is.
It's good that you have that support too, getting back into the realm. CB wrote the foreword as well to the book, in case you guys want to read it. So thank you so much for summarizing the book for us and going into depth on some key points. Is there anything you want to share that maybe you left out of the book? Any neat things that you'll only catch on this live?
There was one thing after I wrote the book. I was like, dang, I just kind of left that hanging there. I didn't really give an answer, what came of this. So when we lived up in Tennessee for a year and a half, because of the housing crash, we had lost everything, our home, our cars, everything. And we moved up to this little 1,000-foot square mobile home that we had up in Tennessee. So while we were up there, and we ended up moving into a house, and when we started moving everything back down to Florida, there was one item left in the house, and it was like a 10 by 13 picture of Jesus at the Lord's table, and under it says, "Do this in remembrance of me." And we had it sitting up on the mantle of the fireplace. And I remember standing at the door getting ready to leave the house for the last time, and my husband was standing next to the picture, and he says, "You don't want this, do you?" And he didn't even say it like that. He was just like, "You don't want this, do you?" Like that. And I stood there at the door with the door open, and I just stared at that picture, because I used to, consider myself a very strong, rooted Christian. And at that moment, I just stared at this picture of Jesus, and I was like, thinking in my head, what in the world happened? I used to feel so close to you, and I don't feel it anymore. I have absolutely no connection to you at all. And so after thinking about that for a minute, I just looked at my husband. I was like, nah, just leave it. But that moment, because that's when every other decision I made from that point on is, what took me down into the occult. But I knew even before I came out of the hospital, because when I was in the hospital, my husband told me that our house sold, and all I could think about was the picture I left behind of Jesus. And I was like, I've got to get that picture back. And it wasn't like I was worshiping the picture or anything like that. It was just symbolic that I'm going to get teary-eyed, because I wanted Jesus in my life. So it was just symbolic of all of that. So I think when I was still in the hospital, I told my husband, when you talk to the realtor, ask him to send us back that picture. That was the only thing. That was the only thing left back in that house. And the realtor did. He mailed it back to me, and I have the picture.
Awesome.
So it was getting that picture back. It was, I don't know, just like coming back full circle.
And correct me if I'm wrong, a snap of that picture, since you did get it back, is available on your website, right?
Yeah, on my website. Whether you want to do it after you read the book or before you read the book, if you put your email in, a password will be sent to you, and you will have access to all the pictures. I uploaded all of my personal pictures that are tied into the story of the book. So you're going to see so many things that I talk about in the book. You're going to see pictures of it. And I took a picture of myself with the picture of Jesus at the Last Supper, to show that I got the picture back.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can go check that out before you read the book, after, but definitely after the live. Don't go do it now. What would be, just, coming full circle here, what's the main takeaway that you want your readers to get from this? What can you teach them through this book?
I say the biggest thing there's several things, but I would say the biggest thing is to do not walk into anything blindly. Do not just follow something without looking into it, checking into it. And all churches are different. All churches have they're different denominations. They have different beliefs. Some churches add things to the Bible that aren't in the Bible. So thoroughly read the Bible, study it, know it. So if something is happening in your church and you don't see it in the Bible, you'll know this isn't right. This isn't what God says. And not only that, but just following anything blindly like I did into the spirit world, crystals, tarot cards, astrology, all of that stuff. Don't follow into things blindly without doing your proper research and knowing what you're doing.
Awesome. So there's a part 1, part 2. Will there be a part 3? I don't know. What's your next step? What's now going on now for you?
Yeah, I definitely know there'll be another book. I don't know exactly what it will be right now. I'm thinking of maybe a Bible study tied into Heaven's Joy, because there are discussion questions for every chapter.
Some speaking engagements.
Speaking engagements. I'm thinking about reaching out, hopefully it'll lead into speaking at churches, because there's so many Christians that are dabbling in occult things and not even realizing what they're doing is occult. But the reason why I feel like this is going to grow into other books is because when I first became a Christian and came out of this, I started taking some classes, and I took this critical look at religion class. And while I was in that class, and I was explaining to the students the holiness of God and why you do not create idols, like idols of iron or gold, and worship these idols. And as I was explaining this, I received my call, and I didn't know that's what it was at the time, because the way I can explain it is I knew without a doubt 100% that I was being called to teach Christianity. What does that mean exactly, and how does it look? I wasn't sure. But I knew it was like, the only way I can explain it is it was like a key unlocked a door that had been locked for a certain period of time. And I just knew it 100%. It wasn't, I didn't hear anything, any voices speaking to me, or nobody told me. It was just a knowing. It was like, I just knew this is what I was going to be doing. And I even talked to my pastor about it. I've talked to others about it at my church, and they're the ones who are like, you just received your call from God. And so that's how I look at this, is this book too is teaching as well as storytelling. And so that's why I know I really have a strong feeling there will be more books to come. So we'll see what God has in store.
Mm-hmm. And you're being modest, because I heard you're getting on a couple of podcasts in the next few weeks, which will be posted on the page very soon here as they start to publish. But final thought, most important thing, where do we get the book? Where can we find it?
Right now, it's just available as a hardcover. And I'll show you this part too. Not only does it have the dust jacket on it, but it also has the cover on the hard cover too as well. And you can order it now on my website, www.susanmcceldry.com. So you have the hardcover, and it is also available as an ebook on Amazon and Apple Books and Barnes and Nobles and some other websites. So that's where you can get it right now.
Awesome. And at Prest in Lakeland, I heard that they'll have just a few copies here, so don't sell them out tomorrow. But thank you guys for hopping on here with us. Anyone have any last minute questions? We'll check them out really quick. Awesome. It's good to hear you guys can't put it down. That's how I was. I read half of it in one night. Awesome. If you guys have any questions, drop them real quick. I feel like we answered all the good stuff. Ready to sign off?
Yes. Oh, one last thing. I did do a podcast. I've done my first one, and it will be posted this Thursday. So I will share that podcast with you guys, and I'll be doing another one next week. And I think I'll be doing another one in August. So I know I've had 3 coming up. So I'm excited to share this journey with you guys. I'm very transparent. You know, I mean, I don't care what people are going to think, that I went absolutely nuts and crazy, and I did. And God saved me, and so that's the joy of my life, and I'm here to share that story.
Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Have a good evening. Thanks for coming.